Hey trainers, hello everybody. My name is Phoebe Gardner. Um, I'm going to be bringing you through the first module of our training agenda, which is about bringing participants through the Cosecha values. And the way that we in Cosecha live out our values is through a relational practice called resonating that comes from the Relational Center, which is out of Los Angeles, and really provides the core of the way that we respond and relate to each other in Cosecha. So resonating is how we build trust with each other, and also a culture of vulnerability and honesty, so that we're bringing our true selves as human beings to this movement, and that we're really connecting with each other. Resonating is about telling stories and having the people who are listening reflect back to us the moments where they emotionally connected to our stories. And this is something that we do in trainings, in our volunteer organizer houses, in our village meetings. So it's really carried throughout the whole Cosecha community. And I want to be very clear that this is different from a story of self, which some of you might know from organizing experience. We're not trying to shape a particular narrative here in order to get people involved in the movement. We're more interested in modeling a deep openness with each other that will really allow us to be full humans with each other. So I'm going to run through this module as we would do it at a training, and at the end I'm going to give some tips about facilitating resonating. We also have trainer's notes with the timing of each part that can help you prepare to lead this module. So let's get started. So we want to start our training with learning the values of Cosecha. In Cosecha, we are really here to build trust with each other and build a culture of vulnerability and honesty among each other. And we really believe that without this, none of the Cosecha strategy, no actions, no villages, nothing will be possible. And we do this because we know that just because we are in community, we are in a community, we're sitting here with each other, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are truly in community. So I want to start off by asking people here, who has ever been in a group like this one, in any group, in any environment, where you're surrounded by people but you still feel alone, like you're not actually connecting with the people around you? So in Cosecha, we do not want an atmosphere like that because that's what we call a toxic environment. We want to build a healthy environment here. So before that, we just kind of want to see what your guys' experiences have been in toxic and healthy environments, whether that be movement spaces, organizations, or any other environment. So who has been part of a toxic environment or movement? Raise your hands. Great. Now raise your hands if you've been part of a healthy environment or movement. Wonderful. So let's talk about both. Let's talk about what are the qualities of toxic environments versus healthy environments. How does it feel to be a part of these spaces? And how do these environments impact the work that we're trying to do together? So first, those of you who've been part of a toxic environment, raise your hands. What are some of the qualities of a toxic environment? What does it feel like to be in a toxic environment? And how does it impact the work that you do? When you're in a toxic environment, what are you able to do? What are you able to get done or not get done? Wonderful. Raise your hands again if you feel like you've been part of a healthy environment. Now, what does that feel like? What are some of the qualities of healthy environments? So in Cosecha, we believe that we are a family. We are part of circles and villages and communities, and it is crucial for us to have a healthy movement because we believe that it doesn't matter how amazing and risky and honest and groundbreaking our strategy is, that we will not win if we have a toxic environment in which we do not trust each other and really feel like people have each other's backs. So to have a healthy environment, we really need to know that everyone that we're working with is really going to show up for us, and not show up for us just as pieces of the movement, but show up for us as real human beings in our completeness. And that's why in Cosecha we practice storytelling and resonating. So to create trust, we do two things. We tell our stories and then we resonate. And we don't just tell any story, but we really tell vulnerable stories that really speak to our values. And these stories, when I say vulnerable stories, what I mean is that they don't have to be perfectly crafted stories with a beginning and an end that you've practiced before. We really encourage you to share something that you may not have shared with anyone before, or that you may have shared with only the people who are closest to you, and really see kind of where that story takes you. And this doesn't have to be a story about organizing. If you have organized, it doesn't have to be a story about immigration, even though it absolutely can be. This is really about being vulnerable about who we are as human beings. So the story, I want you guys to think about the story as having three parts. So first, thinking about a challenge in your life. And then thinking about what value do you hold close to your heart that was threatened by that challenge. Because often things are difficult for us or become obstacles for us because they put into question something that we feel is really important and a way that we feel the world should work. And then the third part is I want you to think about a support system that you had to bring you through that challenge. And sometimes it might be really easy to recognize the support system, and sometimes we might have to actually think about what supports were actually there that we may not have realized were there. So when the person is telling their story, the next thing that's going to happen is that we as listeners are going to resonate with that person. So what is resonating? Resonating is sharing back the moments to the person who's telling the story, sharing back the moments when you felt like that story was happening to you. So this is really about listening with your heart and reflecting when you felt like you were feeling that person's pain, or you were feeling that person's happiness, when your heart really connected with their heart. So the actual phrases that you can use are, I resonated with you when you said such and such statement. Or I was right there with you when you said such and such statement. And it's actually good to use this exact line because it will keep us really within the parameters and the language of what resonating is. And so again, you can paraphrase, you can say exactly what they said, you can use their exact words, or you can paraphrase, but again, it's a reflection back of something that they said that really captured you. And it's also important to note that you don't have to have gone through that person's exact experience to be able to resonate with that person. So if someone is sharing, for example, about a loss of a parent, I don't have to have lost my parent to be able to resonate with them. That we can resonate across experiences and across identities because of the shared emotions that come out. So we also want to give some boundaries to explain what resonating is not. So resonating is not asking questions. It's not saying, tell me more about what it was like to go to college, or what it was like in this experience that you had. It's also not giving advice. It's not saying, it sounds like you really, need to reconnect with your sister. I really think you should go talk to her. It's not doing that. It's also not one-upping or trying to compare our experiences. So it's not saying, wow, you really had it tough growing up, but listen, I had it tougher because such and such thing. It's also not making meaning of their story, meaning that it's not analyzing or interpreting their story. So it's not something like, wow, it really sounds like you have some issues still with your father. It sounds like there's some stuff from your childhood. It's not doing any of our own interpretation of that person's story. And it's also not telling your own story. So it's not saying, wow, I really resonate with, how difficult it was getting along with your grandmother, because I also had a difficult relationship with my grandmother when I was little. It's not bringing it back to our own story. And it's important to remember that resonance, this practice of resonating is new, right? It's not the way that we're used to responding to one another. And it's pretty common for us to ask questions when someone is telling something personal about their lives, or give advice, or tell our own story. That those are very common and very natural ways to show someone that we're listening and show someone that we're paying attention. And those are perfectly fine responses to use in another space for another time. But here we really want to respect the rules of resonating, because these rules make it about the storyteller rather than about us. And each of us are going to get a turn to share our stories. So it's really when the person is sharing their story, the attention and the focus needs to be on them and not about relating it back to us. And these rules also really allow people to share something vulnerable, because they're not going to be worried about getting questioned or getting judged or getting misinterpreted by the people who are listening to them. And it really allows us to focus in on them. And that resonating is so powerful. The reason we do this particular type of listening and responding is that it makes, through resonating, the storyteller really feels like he or she is not alone. That the feelings that they feel as people going through this world are feelings that other people have felt too. And that their feelings are being heard and being held by the people who are listening to them and resonating with them. And the other reason why resonating is so powerful is that resonating really reaffirms your values. That if I always resonate with someone, when someone is speaking about their family, it means that family is an important value for me and that we connect over that value of family. Or if someone is sharing their story and they hear kind of the same type of resonance from many different people, they can recognize that as the value. So before we break up into circles, so everyone is going to get a chance to resonate and practice resonating and sharing their story, I want to model, I want to share my story with you guys. And before we do that, we're going to create a space for resonating. So we're actually going to light this candle, and I want everyone to get close and form a circle around me. So if you're in chairs, you can bring your chairs closer, or you can sit on the floor around me. So this is a story that I have actually, I think it's a story that only my best friends really know about. I've done resonating, before in Cosecha, and I've never shared this story, but it kind of just popped into my mind right now. So I am turning 27 in a few months, and I graduated from college about 5 years ago now. I went to Dartmouth College, which is in New Hampshire, in the northern part of the U.S., in a very, it was a very isolated campus. There was a small town around us, and then a lot of rural communities in New Hampshire and Vermont around us. But we weren't in a big city. We weren't connected to a lot of other communities. I think I felt like it was like everything in our life in those 4 years really happened around this small little area. And it was a really difficult place to be for many reasons. But when I was a freshman, when I was just starting, I didn't really realize how difficult it would be. I knew that I kind of felt overwhelmed and alone and uncomfortable a lot, but I didn't really know why, and I thought that a lot of it was my fault. And I was really like trying, like wanting to be close to people, and it was becoming difficult. I think the partying and the frat culture were hard, and it didn't feel like people were happy. Like for me, it didn't feel like a lot of fun. Like the partying culture didn't feel fun. It felt kind of more scary. And there was one person who I was good friends with. She lived across from me. I'll call her Kathy in this story. That's not her real name, but that's the name I'll give her. She was awesome. I'm from right up suburb of Boston. She was from the Bronx. She was really warm and really, really sweet, and really like embraced me. And she was different from me in the sense that she was really excited about Dartmouth when I felt very negative about how my experience was freshman year. Like she felt she was connecting with a whole bunch of people, and like she was so excited by the classes and about all of the stuff that was going on for students, and I felt like very kind of alone. And I internalized that, like I thought it was me who was making myself alone. And she just seemed like her arms were just outreached. She was also really fun. Like I really enjoyed hanging out with her. And it was really, really important to me to have her freshman year. But I wasn't appreciating her as much as I should have. I think that I couldn't, for some reason I was looking for like other friends, other people to be friends with, and I couldn't focus in on her friendship. But we continued to be friends freshman year. By sophomore year and junior year, I was living somewhere else. I was living in another house, and I was I was more excited to be living in that other house. I felt like the people there were like people I really wanted to be friends with. And I also had this other group of friends and all of them were kind of like connected with me in being part of a group of students on campus who were organizing other students to support workers on campus, who were organized through a union and like did the cleaning and did all the cooking in the dining halls, and all of the maintenance of all the buildings. And they were getting really screwed by the administration of Dartmouth. And this is like the first time that I was thinking about workers' rights. I thought a lot about race stuff before, but I hadn't ever thought about workers' movements. And it was like being a part of that was making me really like delve deeply into how isolating I felt like Dartmouth's campus was. And I was doing that, and I was living with these other people, and she was doing her own thing. She was part of a sorority on campus. Dartmouth is really big in our fraternities and sororities, and I think in a way that I and other people were really critical of. She was connecting to a lot of women that she felt were really awesome in her sorority. And she was also doing stuff with women's groups on campus, and kind of some other things. She was doing a lot of women's studies classes on campus, which I should have been doing, but I wasn't doing. These classes sounded awesome. But I think the fact that a lot of her world was in the sorority, that I started to judge her more and more. Then I started to kind of associate her with this whole Greek life on campus that I found really really kind of despicable. But I think I found it despicable because I actually felt kind of intimidated and not accepted by that group. And So I started to spend less and less time with her and want to talk to her less and less, and that became more and more obvious to her. And I remember one conversation that we had where I don't really remember the conversation totally, but I remember saying something to her that was very judgmental of her being a part of a sorority, and just kind of like questioning, like, not even listening to why she felt supported by the sorority, but just being like, how could you participate in this? That's like at the root of all evil at Dartmouth. And I remember her saying to me, like, she said to me, I've opened myself up so much to you. Like, I have told you about the things in my life that are the most difficult. Like, the things that are, like, really make me feel like a worthless person. And you're going to judge me. And I remember feeling like a really awful person when she said that to me. And wanting to say to her, listen, the reason that I'm judging you is because I feel so unaccepted by that world, and not being able to say that to her, and being stuck in kind of this like righteousness about Dartmouth College, and not being able to reach out to her in any human way. And we kind of stopped talking for a while, and then right before we graduated, I was part of this like panel event on campus, and afterwards she came up to me and she was just like, she told me how appreciative she was of like seeing me up there and hearing some of the things that I was talking about my own experience at Dartmouth. And she said how sorry she was that we hadn't been close for a while. And again, I remember just like not saying anything to her really, and just kind of walking away. And since then, like, I've been able to see her a couple of times, but not really. And I look back on my freshman year at Dartmouth when I met her with like a lot of like, oh, I don't even want to think about those memories of my experience at Dartmouth. And thinking about that story like causes me a lot of shame, because something that I really value is just being able to connect with people, especially when they share really vulnerable things with me. And instead of connecting with her, I was judging her. And my closest friends, who I'm still close with now from college, know that. But it's not an experience or a friendship that I talk about with a lot of people. And it's not always something that I think too much about anymore, but when I do think about it, I cringe at myself, and I feel like I was talking about workers' rights, and I was talking about racial justice, and I was like talking about how alone everything felt on campus, and I wasn't able to connect with her when clearly she wanted to connect. So, thank you for hearing my story. So I'm going to ask, so this is a time that people can resonate back with my story. And again, I just kind of want to review the guidelines and the boundaries of resonating. So again, resonating is not about asking questions. It's not about interpreting or giving advice. It's not about comparing my story with yours, and it's not about telling your own story. It's more about saying, I resonated with you when you said such and such thing. So now everyone is going to have a chance to create their own story. So first, I would like everyone to take 5 minutes to work on this worksheet that we're going to give out to you, where you're going to think about a challenge in your life, a value that you had that challenge really put into question, and that that challenge threatened that value. And what is a support system that you have or that you had at that moment that really helped you get through that challenge? So we're going to take just about 5 minutes for everyone to think about their own challenge value support system story. And again, I want to encourage people to, this doesn't have to be about organizing, it doesn't have to be about immigration, it can be about anything in our lives as human beings. And it can be a story that you've never told before, or a story that you don't really know where it's going. Just kind of, you want to start it off, see where you get. So we're going to take 5 minutes to do that. And then we're going to form groups of 3, and each person is going to get 5 minutes to share their story and 2 minutes to be resonated with. So the first person's going to go, they're going to get 5 minutes to tell their story, and then after those 5 minutes, there's going to be 2 minutes for the other 2 people in the group to resonate with them. And then the second person and the third person is going to go, and then we'll come back as a group. Great, so I want to hear, just want to debrief with people about how that felt. You know, how did it feel to be resonated with? How did it feel to tell vulnerable stories? How did it feel to resonate? I love people in circles to just kind of give their feedback to the group about what that experience is like. So who believes that we need more trust in each other? And who believes that we have to depend more on each other? Because I think in this country, there's this idea, right, that we need to be independent, that we need to do things on our own, that we don't. The only way to survive is to really hold ourselves up, and for many people that's been true, because there isn't a lot of support. But if we're independent, how are we ever going to be connected to each other? How are we ever going to be in community? And the only way to really connect with people is to be vulnerable as human beings with each other. It's really the only way, and it's really the only way that we as Cosecha are going to get to where we're going and to win what we're trying to win. So thank you all for sharing, for being vulnerable, and for sharing a bit of yourselves with each other. I know that it can be very difficult and scary at first, but it is something that we're going to continue practicing. Thank you. All right, trainers, so that is what the module would look like. I know there was, since we don't have a group now, there's a lot of pauses where I would be getting responses from the group. So just bear with us on, on those pauses. I wanted to go over some tips for facilitating resonating for you guys to, as you're practicing this module. And it's really good to keep practicing this module. So practice 2, 3, even 4 times before the whole training circle comes back together for a big training for the trainers. And it's also going to be important that you guys first run through this kind of as participants so that you can so that you can practice sharing a vulnerable story and getting resonated with, and then resonating with other people, because it's really important that you feel the importance of this to be able to teach this to other people in the training. And you guys are going to be kind of the guardians of resonating, and you're going to help other people, you're going to help bring other people into this culture. So one quick thing I wanted to say is, at the beginning, when we talk about toxic and versus healthy cultures, just to kind of give you a sense of what we're talking about, some of the things that come up for toxic culture, a lot of things that come up is feelings of isolation, a lack of trust among groups, backstabbing, kind of feeling overwhelmed, feeling like you can't get your work done, feeling like you don't trust the people around you. Those are a lot of qualities and feelings in toxic environments that come up for folks. Healthy environments, a lot of the feelings that come up are having a lot of support systems, feeling like you're not, in this work alone, that you really have a team around you, feeling like people really see who you are and really accept who you are and aren't judging you. And so I think those, many different things might come up, and you guys also might have your own experiences with toxic and healthy environments, but those are kind of a lot of the themes that come up when we talk about this with groups. And again, I want to remind people that this is not a story of self. So it's really, really important for the trainer to model a vulnerable story, because the tone that you set with folks is what other people are going, is the level of vulnerability that other people are going to get to also. And it's also really important for trainers to model good resonating. Something that you can do is when the trainer shares his or her story in front of the group, you can have the other trainers of the other modules be part of the audience, and maybe one or two of those trainers can give the first resonance back, so that the other people who are in the training that might not have done this before can see what good, can kind of see how to do resonating in a way that respects the boundaries of resonating. Something that we've also found that's really important is that when teaching what resonance is not, it's really important. It's really helpful to offer examples so that people get a really clear sense of the boundaries, and also to explain that these boundaries are not arbitrary; that they've been really thought out in order to keep this practice feeling safe. Resonance is also a very new way of responding to one another that's not customary, kind of like what we talked about in the module. So it's often common that people do the not resonating responses because that's the way that we've been taught to listen to each other. And that's totally okay. But there's no need to shame or to isolate anyone for messing up or for not doing it right. And some things that you can do with people who kind of give a response that's more in the not resonating category is take time to listen. You don't have to cut them off. You can appreciate their comment, and then support them by bringing them back to what the resonating actually is. So you can support them by reminding them that thank you so much for what you shared. It's really important, but I just want to remind you that you can just share the moments of the story you resonated with. And you can invite them to use the exact words they remember from the storyteller, like literally just kind of repeat back the same words. Or to paraphrase, but again, without interpreting the moment that they resonated with. And it's the most common thing is for people to go back into their own story. And if they do that, which will inevitably happen, listen, appreciate, thank them for sharing their story, and then show how that person could have resonated without breaking the boundaries. So saying, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that we all kind of have common stories. What you could have said is, I resonated with you when you said that you felt alone in that moment, and just end it there, instead of then going into your experience, that there will be time for you to share your own experience. So those are some tips if people, kind of as people are still starting to get familiar with what resonating is. I also realized I think something that might be helpful is for me to share. I give examples of what resonating is not, but I think I could give some examples of what resonating is, just so that you guys get a sense of kind of how like the language and the flow of resonating is. So thinking about the story that I just shared with you, which it is true, I have not shared that story with other people besides my best friends, and it just kind of came to me as I was doing this module for you guys. So if I was listening to that story, just kind of to give out some examples of what resonating is, I could say, I really resonated with you when you said that you were close to a friend and then stopped being close to them. Or I was right there with you when you said that you felt shame for judging someone who was close to you. or I really resonated with you when you felt alone at college. So just to kind of give you some examples, and once you guys practice that with each other, I think that you'll start to see how a mood in a room really changes when you resonate. There is an intimacy that is created in a way that other practices, in a way that's really absent from a training without resonance. So thank you for working with us through this. I hope that this was helpful. And this is, again, kind of a real key building block for the culture that we need in Cosecha, that we need to be able to love each other and trust each other and organize with each other. Thank you.